If at any point in your real estate investing career you ever decide to work with homeowners who are in foreclosure or who have some distress in their personal life, or maybe they own properties in distress, I want to share with you 5 things that I think you really need that can become invaluable, not just to you and to your team, but they can definitely become invaluable to the people that you work with. So I want to share these 5 things with you. And again, this is from personal experience, not just as a consultant, but from personal experience as an investor, someone who works directly with homeowners in foreclosure and homeowners who have distress situations outside of foreclosure. Perhaps they just have distressed property. So the first thing I think you need is empathy, just point blank period, especially when you're dealing with foreclosures and distress problems with the homeowner or with their properties. You got to have empathy. Now, when I say empathy, I'm referring to the fact that there is something inside of you that puts yourself in their shoes. So it's not like I'm just standing on the sidelines of their life and I feel sorry for you, but I feel you. I get it. I understand. For example, if you've ever been through foreclosure and you're working with a homeowner who's in foreclosure, that's empathy because you know exactly what they're dealing with. It's very similar to if someone has lost a loved one and you're communicating with them and you've lost a loved one. That's empathy. So even if you haven't had those same experiences, I think that you can draw from your spiritual instincts to really connect with somebody on an empathetic level. And so empathy allows you to speak to people at a different tone. You don't just talk to people, you're really talking with them. Empathy allows you to really understand all the things that they're dealing with, even though it's really not your problem, but empathy goes a long way. I think it's one of the most valuable assets you can have, especially if you're working with people who are in pre-foreclosure or who have distressed properties. Number 2, second thing you need is patience. Now, this is kind of like an oxymoron because most of the times when you're dealing with people in foreclosure, depending on what stage of the foreclosure you work with them or you connect with them on, you might not have time. You might not be able to really be patient like you would with someone who has all the time in the world. If you're dealing with people who may only have a couple of days or a couple of weeks, in most cases it may just be a few weeks before the auction is scheduled, you don't have a lot of time, but you still have to have patience. So I like to say it this way. You can be persistently patient, okay? You can be persistently patient. So that means I know I got ants in my pants if I'm on the phone or if I'm conversing with someone via text or whatever. I know I got ants in my pants. I need to get something done. But at the same time, I need to convey to them that I'm willing to take the time to sit down with them, to go over all the options that they have, to discuss the details, to weigh the pros and cons, and to make sure that they're making the best decision. Now, on one hand, they may be dealing with procrastination or having their head in the sand, like they call the ostrich syndrome. So on one hand, you're dealing with that, where you gotta kind of push them, but at the same time, you have to be persistently patient enough to not push them over the edge when they're already distressed, overwhelmed, depressed, and just going through a whole lot. So number 2 is patient. Number 3, people skills. This is the third thing you need. Now, of course, if you're a straight shooter, like I'm a straight shooter, I'm pretty black and white. It gets me in trouble a lot because I'm always just giving it to people 100, raw, uncut. That's like my little thing. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. But I'm gonna be honest with you. When I'm talking to people who are in these situations, yes, I'm being honest with them, but I'm mindful of how I articulate that. So your people skills show up when someone is, let's say, telling you a story and you're just trying to get to the next point because you're looking at your script and it's like, I got to ask this next question, and they're just going on about their aunt and their children and their dog and their house and 3 years ago. Well, your people skills know how to chime in and to some extent professionally take back control of the situation, but don't be so disconnected from people that you're not skilled enough to navigate that conversation in a way that you allow them to give you what they're giving you, because that's a level of trust that you're gaining when you allow them to speak their mind. I've had so many conversations with people in pre-foreclosure, in distress situations. They talk about everything other than the main thing, which is the pending auction. They're talking about the kids. They're talking about grandkids. They're talking about what happened 20 years ago. They're talking about the dogs or what color they painted the den. But I have to navigate through that conversation in a way, and your people skills allow you to do that. One of the greatest assets you should have in your people skills is to seek to understand, not always to be understood, even though you want to be understood, but seek to understand. That requires you to listen, and you listen, and then instead of just continue to respond because you don't want any pauses in the conversation, you seek to understand, you listen, and then you ask the right questions to make sure that you're getting what you need to get, but you're also allowing them to give you what they feel like at that time they want to give you. That's just a footnote. Number 4, the fourth thing you need is relationships. Now, why do you need relationships? Because most of the objections that you have with people who are in pre-foreclosure or who own distressed properties, most of the objections are objections that they're going to tell you they're working on. So if it's a pre-foreclosure, they may be working on a loan mod. They're trying to get their 401k cashed in. They're waiting for their uncle who's going to call them back in 2 weeks to let them know if they'll give them the money. All these things they're working on, right? And those are objections. But sometimes you just telling them how good you are and telling them why they should go with you is not always the solution. So that's when your relationships play a very important role. Maybe you have relationships with bankruptcy attorneys. Maybe you have relationships with a lender who could give you some insight into how long is this process based on what the bank just told this homeowner. Maybe they're open to accept whatever your solution and offer is, and you need relationships with maybe apartment complexes or other people that could help them in their relocation, movers, people who can come and help them with their storage, all these things. So your professional relationships and your personal relationships are valuable because even if it's just you referring them to someone, it can go a long way. All right. So number 4 is relationships. And then the 5th thing you need, number 5, is creativity. Now you need creativity when you are putting deals together, because there's no one deal works all the time scenario. You have to be creative with these situations. And so your creativity is going to be valuable because maybe, just maybe, you have to break some of the terms up. Like, for example, we have experienced times, or at least one time, that instead of us giving the homeowner, the seller, money at closing, we had to break that money up because they needed a little bit before. Is it a risk on us? Of course it is. But that's something we needed to do in order to get them relocated and repositioned so that we could get to closing and be able to have the ability to access the property and to start the work that we needed to get done in order to get the home back on the market. And so we had to get creative in how we structured that so we would not put ourselves in a compromising position with too much money on the line, but so that we wouldn't be stalled and delayed once we close because they're unable to move. So you just have to be creative, all right? Sometimes there's so much money involved where you might not be able to give them all the money at closing. So you may have to structure some type of post-closing agreement in which your attorney can help you draft that documentation and make sure that you put the right language in your stipulations or you specified in your contract. But my point is, you got to get creative, and you've got to use that creativity as an asset to make sure that you're helping that homeowner. Because remember, if we're talking about pre-foreclosures or homeowners who have distress in their life or distressed properties, these are things that I've personally learned that are very valuable to how I approach that homeowner / seller and how we get them and ourselves to the finish line. So these are just 5 things. I'm sure there are tons of other ones, but those are just the 5 that I could think about. Empathy, patience, people skills, relationships, and creativity. Maybe you have some other ones. I know some people will watch this and you got some technical aspects or some nuances and angles. Put them in the comments. Maybe somebody will watch the video and then they'll look in the comments and see your 5 or your 55. I don't know. But hopefully this was valuable to you to give you a different perspective of how we work with pre-foreclosures and homeowners who are in distress or have distressed properties. And I would love to get some feedback, takeaways from this video. Put them in the comments. Of course, we have other resources. We have courses. We have regular real estate meetups. We have a mentorship program where we teach our community members the ins and outs of creative real estate investing, specifically in the area of pre-foreclosures and subject to transactions. So I look forward to hearing from you. Click the link. If you need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be here to answer your questions and to see to it that you get to the next level in your real estate investment journey. Peace.